All right, here are our last three guidelines for analyzing a statistical study. Number 6, we're looking at the setting and the wording of any surveys we might encounter. All right, so when we say wording, here's a good example to kind of think about. Would you say that traffic contributes the most to air pollution? This question is what we call a lead. Ooh, this question is what we would call a leading question because it's leading the reader to say, oh yeah, it's traffic, totally. When there's so many different options, there's, other modes of transportation like airplanes, ships, trains, etc. There's also industry, the big companies that kind of just pollute the ocean at will. There's many different options, but they're kind of leading us, this question is leading us to say, oh, well, especially for those who aren't as informed, they're kind of leading them to say, oh, well, traffic is the only thing I know of because I hit traffic every time I leave work. So yes, it's traffic, right? So leading questions are a big no-no. To avoid this, you wanna avoid this by using multiple choice questions. You wanna if you're running a study and you have a survey that you want people to answer, best practice typically, this isn't the case for every single study, but best practice is using a multiple choice question. That way, people at least are aware of the different options that contribute, in this case, to air pollution, and they're not led to answer one way or another. All right. And then setting is a little more obvious, right? It's kind of just, using your common sense. In this case, a uniformed police officer is conducting a survey on a college campus to learn more about illegal drug use. What college student is going to upfront tell a uniformed police officer of their potential drug usage? I would hope that none of them, right? If they don't want to end up behind bars, if they happen to be participating in such an activity. You want to, if you really want to get information from college students, in this case, about potential illegal drug use, it, it doesn't make sense to station a police officer, right? You want to make sure that whatever your setting is, um, the participants are comfortable to answer. So, in this case, you might want to do like an anonymous survey or something that is not given by, a uniformed police officer. Maybe it's sent out by like a third party source, and maybe they're assured that their answers will remain anonymous and will not be, whatever extra precautions they would like to take in order to ensure a good response. So, this one is kind of self-explanatory. Just be aware, right? That's kind of hard to go into an in-depth explanation. Just just don't don't make it conflicting. You want people to respond to your survey, so don't put them in an uncomfortable situation. I guess that would be a good. Don't put participants in an uncomfy situation. Ooh, I don't know how to spell. Situation. All right. Okay. Next guideline is we want to make sure that we're checking that our results and our graphs are presented fairly. We don't want to, like, the big moral of the story here is don't. Ooh, I keep doing that. Don't. That looks like a P. Don't jump to conclusions. Okay, don't jump to conclusions without proper evidence, right? Don't, like, you want to make sure that whatever evidence you have matches up with or sorry, whatever conclusions you make matches up directly with the values that you calculate, the data that you collect, etc. An example of this is right here. A school board in Boulder, Colorado announced that 28% of students were reading below grade level. Okay, that's what they concluded from the study. Um, the announcement was based on reading tests on which 28% of Boulder students scored below the national average for their grade. Now, maybe it's not obvious here, but the and it might be true, but something that they need to clarify for us is that does the national average equal grade level? Is that the case? If it is, then the conclusions are correct. But because they don't tell us that, if we're just basing this solely off of what the information, based off the information they give us, then we can't make this conclusion unless we know that the national average is grade level. Then we can't say that they're reading below grade level just because they scored below the national average. For all we know, the national average might be that it's slightly above grade level. So if there are people scoring below, or sorry, if there are people scoring below the national average, is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, we would need more information to make that full conclusion. Okay. So if your data does not support whatever you're saying, do not put that in your conclusion statement, right? And it's the same thing with graphs. When we're looking at graphs, you want to make sure that, let me go ahead and separate here. Graphs, when we're checking graphs, look for things like the title, the scaling on the axes. Okay. How often do you see a graph that like you see it and you're like, oh my God, that's so crazy. But then you look at the scaling and it's like, of course it's exaggerated. It starts at big numbers. So they do that to kind of, show you that, oh my God, look at the way this graph is like increasing. When really the bottom is only like 1 and the top is only like 2, right? So you got to keep an eye out for scaling. Make sure that there's labels and units, because there could be there is a significant difference between grams and milligrams. So if they're showing something in milligrams, but they want you to believe it's in grams, is that, make sure you're kind of keeping an eye out for that. And then the type of graph. Should they be using a pie chart here? Should they be using a line graph here? We'll talk about that more in section 1.5 when we look at the different types of graphs and what we use them for. All right. So then last but not least, sorry about that. Just kind of the wrap up in our analysis of a study. Let's look at the conclusions they're making. Are these conclusions, here are some questions to ask yourself. So do the conclusions do they achieve the goals of the study? Okay, are they telling us that they met their goals or not? Do they make sense? Do they help us rule out alternative explanations? And this kind of gets at the idea of the confounding variables. And then it's kind of hard to word it with the way I started it. So then let's just create a new sentence to make it easier. Are the conclusions practical? Like, do I care about this result? That's kind of the question embedded in this question. Are the conclusions practical? And we see that here with this example. An experiment was conducted comparing people on a fast diet supplement to people who tried losing weight in other ways. So our treatment was the fast diet supplement and our control was just any other way of losing weight. After 8 weeks, the results showed that the treatment group lost 0.5 pounds more than the control group. Do we really care in that case? Like if the fast diet supplement Was more work than necessary? Do we really care about that extra half pound? Some people might. Half pound is better than nothing. But in other cases, like if the fast diet supplement has really bad side effects, is it worth losing the extra half pound than just doing it in the other ways that were used in the control group? So that's kind of where this idea of practicality comes. The question is it, or not is, was it worth it? Was it worth? Okay, and was all the work that was put into the study, worth the results? That's kind of what you're looking for in this question of practicality. All right, so those were the 8 guidelines. Hopefully they make sense. We'll go ahead and practice that when we do our 1.4 practices, okay? See you in the next set of videos.